Professor David Lahti, thank you very much for being with us, and thank you for your lecture that we've just enjoyed. It's Human Behaviour in the Genes. You argued in the lecture that the idea that genes are entirely responsible for our behaviour is just outdated and not accurate. Could you say a little bit about what influence genes do have on the way that people behave?
Right. Yeah, I would say that the influence of the genes and the environment and development all go together in formulating our behavior. And so both the old-fashioned notion of genetic determinism and the old-fashioned notion of a blank slate or environmental determinism are both equally improper ways to see it, or basically wrong-headed ways to see it. And then also left out of this entire discussion is the importance of development. So I see the genes' influence on our behavior or on any trait as best being seen as controlling the development of the organism, not just a trait by itself.
Yeah. And I guess people are particularly interested in this from the perspective of political issues like criminal behavior or talents and so forth. Are there some particular areas of evolutionary genetics that you think have particularly exciting or fast-moving practical implications for individuals and societies?
Right. Well, I would say that there are particular kinds of behaviors that we share with other organisms that have received a lot of work recently, such as in our circadian rhythms and in personality traits that can be related to more basic traits that we share with other organisms. Another example would be mental illness. There are a lot of genes for behavioral disorders, which I would say are really psychological. There's behavior starts in the mind that have had important genetic influences, and so a lot of recent work has been done on that. Now, in terms of the more sexy or interesting kinds of human behaviors like talents and lifestyles and choices of occupation and those kinds of things, we know much, much less about these things because they're much more recently evolved and sometimes only culturally evolved. And so to say that there are genetic influences on those is possible, but it's much trickier to look for them.
Right. And yeah, one other thing that you touched on was the relationship between genetics and religion, and I know that's a subject of a slightly different lecture, but could you say a word about that?
Yeah, I guess in terms of anything that has first been seen in the world in the last 40, 50, even 100,000 years, I would say that the most we can say about the genes is that they specified a capacity early on that later became co-opted, so to speak, for use in something, in a trait that is much more recent. And so I would say that it's very unlikely that there are religion-specific genes, but at the same time I would say that it is very likely that pre-existing variation may have been co-opted and used such that variation in human genetics may actually influence differences in the tendency of someone to become religious, or even maybe in a very, it would be very tricky to distinguish this, but what religion a person adopts.
Well, Professor, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks.